Hi, and welcome to Session 6. In this session, we'll learn how to invert triads, and we'll use some of those inverted triads to play a beautiful tune that I was just playing called Lean on Me. This tune introduces us to syncopated rhythm and helps us learn to feel the spaces between the notes we play. We'll also learn how to read rhythms in written music. It's going to be an awesome session, so let's get started. In learning the C, F, and G major triads and the others generated by the C major scale, we've played these chords in root position. That is, the C major triad with a C on the bottom, the D minor triad with a D on the bottom, and so on. By taking that C major triad and putting the root, which is C, up on top of the chord rather than on the bottom, we get what's called an inversion. An inversion uses the same notes in the chord but changes the order. The chord has a similar quality to the other chord. It's a C triad, but it sounds different with that C taken up the octave. So this, a C triad in root position, becomes this, a C triad in first inversion. When the third of the chord is the lowest note, we'll call this the first inversion. Now if I take the bottom note of this first inversion C triad, which is an E, and move it up to the top of the chord, so it's like this, we get a C triad in second inversion. When the fifth of the chord is the lowest note, like this, we call it second inversion. If we do this once more, putting the G on top, we're back to root position C triad. Only now we're one octave higher than where we started. So the whole sequence, root position, first inversion, second inversion, and root position up the octave goes like this. Root position, first inversion, second inversion, and then root position again, up an octave. Going back down with these inversions, you'll notice that when we get an octave below middle C, the chords start to get pretty dark and muddy down in the bottom end of the piano. If we're playing from a chord chart, by ear, or writing a song, the best guide in determining where to play the chord on the piano is what sounds best and what color you want to get. You'll most often want to play chords in the meaty mid-range of the piano, like our first chord progression. When we identified the inversions of C, you might have noticed that the opening chord of our first progression is a C major triad in second inversion with a C note down in the left hand. We didn't know what to call it then, just that it was this sound, this shape, and these notes on the keyboard, and then it sounded cool going to the next two chords, which is the most important thing anyway. All this moving around of that C triad brings us to this nugget. Any chord you can play can be inverted by putting the bottom note on the top or the top note on the bottom. Anytime you learn a new chord, try inverting it this way and hear the different color it has with different notes on the top, bottom, and in the middle. In the spirit of this inversion idea, let's take the middle chord of our first progression and we'll invert it. We had an A, middle C, and E in the right hand, and an F an octave and a half below middle C in the bass. Now let's put that A that's on the bottom of that chord up on top of the chord. Now you've got an inversion with C, E, and A, and the same F in the bass. We don't know what to call this chord yet or what inversion we've moved to, and we'll get to that eventually. Right now we just know the chord by sound and shape. Hear how this inversion sounds when compared to the original one. By the way, both of those are F major 7th chords, and we'll get deep into major 7ths in a few sessions. A great example of using inverted triads in the key of C is the familiar piano chords that go with the classic soul tune, Lean on Me. This is one of my favorite bits to play on the piano. So let's learn to play it. First I'll play it for you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Lean on Me was written by the brilliant soul singer Bill Withers. It's a great example of using the first 4 triads of the major scale, all in first inversion. Here's a first inversion C, first inversion D minor, first inversion E minor, and first inversion F. The rhythm of it has a nice groove to it, and the chords, with the exception of one, all stay in the same position and shape, moving parallel, making it pretty user-friendly to learn. So let's take this apart phrase by phrase. We'll start on that C triad in first inversion with middle C on top and with a bass note 2 octaves below middle C. We'll finger the chord 1, 3, 5 in the right hand, and the bass notes will start on the 5th finger in the left hand, and we'll end up covering all 5 notes in that hand position, from C to the G above. The first phrase starts like this in the right hand. 1, 2. The left hand follows it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Together they go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. All the chords in this tune, except one at the very end, have the same shape. It's important to feel that pulse in time while you're playing this tune, as these chords have what's called a syncopated rhythm to them. Syncopation refers to the fact that they don't fall evenly right on the beats like this. Here I'll play it straight with the notes falling evenly on the beats. Here's how it would sound. Instead, some of them have accents that fall on upbeats, so it ends up sounding like this. Lean on Me has a very natural feeling syncopated rhythm, but you've got to get it into your ear and body along with the pulse. The syncopated rhythm uses the pulse as its foundation, and if the pulse isn't felt solidly, there won't be a downbeat to make that upbeat in the groove. Later on we'll learn how to read rhythms like that, but reading and counting this type of rhythm from the music never feels as natural as internalizing it by listening to it and feeling it against the pulse. Tapping a rhythm out is a simple way to focus on the rhythm of a piece of music without having to worry about the notes. Let's try tapping out the rhythm of that phrase while feeling the pulse, and I'll count us in. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. The next phrase goes like this in the right hand, starting on the same inverted C triad with the middle C on top. The left hand on this phrase stays parallel with the right hand, so it's like this. Here's the second phrase, both hands in time. 1, 2. Now try tapping the rhythm after counting 1, 2, just to refresh our memory on that syncopation. 1, 2. Now play phrase 2 again in time. 1, 2. The next phrase is identical to the first one, so it goes the same as we started with. The last phrase starts with the same first 3 chords as the second phrase, and then goes to a new shape, which is F, G, and B, and the bass note goes to G, and we resolve it to the C chord in first inversion that we started with. When working through a section of music, sometimes it's helpful to isolate a problem area and focus on what needs to happen. So let's just isolate the move from that E minor chord on the last phrase to that new shape which has an F, G, and B in the right hand in it. So the move from E minor to that new shape is. And then it goes to the last chord of the tune, which is a C major triad in first inversion. So one more time, we went from E minor to the new shape, which we're not naming yet, to C. Do this very slowly at first and gradually work up to where you can easily go from E minor to that odd shape to C, all in time. So here's that last phrase in time. 1, 2. Okay, now let's put all these pieces together. Let's review the phrases individually, and I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4 before beginning that first phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's play phrase 2, and I'll count 1, 2 to start that phrase. 1, 2. And then phrase 3, I'll count 4, and remember it's exactly the same as the first phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then finally phrase 4, the one with that odd shape there. And I'll count 2 on this one. 1, 2. Now let's get our hands off the keyboard, relax them, take a breath, and we'll fire up the timekeeper at 66 beats per minute and lay this thing down. Since our fingers are staying in the same position, playing the same shape for most of the tune, our forearms are responsible for much of the connection of these chords, and you can use a little sustain pedal, but be careful not to blur the chords. Just feel them riding up and down these parallel chords, changing with the forearm. With chords changing this quickly, once again, we'll want to stay off the pedal, only using it a little bit, or it'll sound like this. Let the metronome establish the pulse for you, and we'll count ourselves in and play the whole thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 2. Once again, if at any point there's any question about the rhythm, notes, or fingering, go back and isolate the questionable rhythm, fingering, or notes and correct them before trying to put the whole thing together. And remember, slow it down if you need to. And one more time, remember our mantra for learning and mastering whatever we're working on. Slow it down and break it down. So far we've been playing rhythms by rote. Now let's get acquainted with reading rhythms on written music by taking a look at a progression we've learned by rote. We'll go back to our first chord progression, and written out it looks like this. We know where these notes are on the keyboard and how the rhythms sound. Now while I play it, let's focus on the written representation of the music. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each played note has a duration or time value that's indicated by several different things. First, the shape of the note head can tell you how long a note is. What type of stem or flag it has, if any, can also determine a note's length. The most basic unit of rhythm is usually, for our purposes, the quarter note, and it looks like this. The quarter note gets one beat of the pulse we're counting in. Its name refers to the fact that it takes up 1/4 of a 4-beat bar. Now let's look at the right hand of that first chord progression written out again. Notice that all the right hand chords are quarter notes. They have a stem and their heads are filled in, and these quarters sound like this. Whole notes get 4 beats each and look like this. The term whole notes refers to the fact that they last for a whole 4-beat bar. Half notes get 2 beats each and look like this and take up half of a 4-beat bar. One more time, let's go back to that first chord progression. And before we played it in quarter notes, we outlined the progression with 4 beats on the first chord and 2 beats on the next chord, like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's look at that version written out. The 4-beat notes are whole notes and look like this on that first chord. Whole notes have no stem, just an open oval. The next 2 chords last for 2 beats each and are half notes. And half notes take up a half of a 4-beat bar, and they have stems and an open head. Eighth notes get half a beat each, and they take up 1/8 of a 4-beat bar and look like this. When we broke up the first chord progression to make our first broken chord progression, in order to give it some movement like this, we were playing 2 notes for every single beat. So if each single beat is a quarter note, then those notes that are twice as fast are eighth notes, a half a beat each, and they look like this on the music going by. When eighths are connected like these to other eighths, their stems are connected or beamed together. An eighth by itself has a flag on its stem like this. It's important to define on each piece of music the number of beats that are going to be in each bar. This is done in the time signature. Time signatures are indicated at the beginning of a piece to indicate how many beats per bar. Let's look at an example. Here's a 4/4 time signature. A time signature has 2 important numbers, and each number tells us something different. The top number indicates how many beats are going to be in each bar of music. The bottom number indicates what kind of note gets 1 beat. While there are several different ways to divide the beat, in this course the bottom number will always be the quarter note, so that number will be 4 for us. And this is the most common. So in our example of a 4/4 time signature, we would have 4 beats in each measure, with a quarter note getting the beat. So back to our first chord progression. The 4/4 thing at the beginning of the line of this written music means our beats are flowing in units of 4. We're expanding the possibilities with the chords we've learned, and next time we'll expand them by leaps and bounds with the addition of the black notes and the ability to play in keys other than C. We've opened new doors rhythmically by playing the syncopated Lean on Me. We've also started learning rhythms and time signatures. In the workshop, we'll break down how to get these concepts in your body and under your fingers, and I'll see you then.